How's it going, everyone? As you can tell from the title of this video, my Turbo X might have yet another coolant leak, but I'm a little bit confused on it, and I need your guys' input as to if it's leaking or if it's just being weird for no reason. If you guys have been following the channel for more than, well, pretty much since I've had this car, particularly in the last, I don't know, maybe 8 months, you'll know that I've had my fair share of coolant-related issues with this car. So far I'll run over what I've replaced. I replaced the expansion tank. I have a DO88 hose kit, so I ended up replacing one of those hoses with an OEM hose once again. So all the coolant hoses have been replaced. Water pump has been replaced. These O-rings and gaskets that sit on this thing that go, you can see the one tube. This tube feeds into like a part, and then there's like a bunch of O-rings and gaskets in there. All those have been replaced. So let me go ahead and tell you guys the issue I've been having. So I'm not sure if it's leaking coolant or if it's just overflow. So let me explain. Basically, I checked the coolant. This was probably about a month ago when I first started noticing this. I checked the coolant and I noticed that it was right at the low marker, and I figured, okay, well, that's not necessarily bad. I figure I should top it off. So I put it not the whole way up to the high marker, but about, you know, maybe 2/3 of the way to the high marker. I drive it, I pull out of my parking spot wherever I was when I left, and I notice, oh great, there's a puddle under the car. So I get home, car cools off, I check the coolant level, and it's right back down around that low marker again. So I kind of run that same, I fill it back up a little bit less this time, maybe to about halfway. Kind of do the same thing another 2 or 3 times. I noticed that right after, you know, right after it cools home right after I get home and it cools off, it's right around that low marker, just above the low marker. So instead of filling it up again this time, I left it at that low marker. I drove it again, and you know, this was probably about 15-20 miles at least that I'm putting on it in between these tests here. And it's not leaking anything, nothing's coming out the bottom, and the coolant level is staying the same. So my first thought is, okay, well maybe it's not leaking, maybe it's just coolant coming out of the expansion tank. Because there's this little hose that comes off the back here, it wraps down around here and it kind of feeds out the bottom. That's basically for overflow. So I thought, well maybe I'm just overfilling it and it's just overflow, but at the same time, I've never had that issue before. So then I thought, okay, maybe when I filled it up, I put way more water than I should have, and it's not a complete 50-50 mix. It might be like 2/3 water and only 1/3 coolant, which I highly doubt I would have done. I'm usually pretty good at about making sure it's even. So instead of putting any sort of water in it, every time I've been topping it off, I just had been putting straight antifreeze in it to kind of help get that to a 50-50 mixture where it should be. But that shouldn't even be an issue because I've been monitoring temperatures on my ECID 2, and unless I'm like really driving the car hard or something, it's not especially now that the weather has cooled off, it's not touching anywhere near 212 degrees. It's usually right around 190, 180 when it's operating normally. So in other words, the car's not getting hot enough to where anything should be boiling or kind of coming off. And that's where I'm confused, because I don't know if maybe it is just overflow. Maybe, you know, and I've checked, I don't smell coolant anywhere. I haven't smelled coolant at all, which is a good sign, I would think. I've checked, you know, maybe it's leaking out of one of these hoses and it's burning off on this heat shield here. Nope, not the sign at all. It's always dry under there. You know, of course, a little bit hot to touch right now, but it's always dry under there. So I'm 95% sure, I'll say, that it's not leaking anywhere. So is this technically a problem? I guess yes, it technically is a problem. Is it a problem that's preventing me from driving the car? No, but it is something that's always in the back of my mind when I go to drive it, because the last thing I want to see is backing out of a parking spot and seeing a puddle of coolant under the car. A lot of you guys watching this video are a lot more knowledgeable than me, so that's why I like to consult you guys for help whenever I can't figure something out, because I don't know what this is. Halfway between high and low, when it's around that point, that's when it seems to leak when it's parked. And not leak to a point where it completely drains the system, but just leak enough to where it gets down to the low marker and then it stops. Doesn't matter if it's parked there for 3 days, doesn't matter if it's parked there for 5 minutes, it'll always be back down at that same spot. Just wanted to interject, future me here. After I recorded that video, a couple days went by and I was thinking about it some more, and I figured, well, maybe there's air in my cool, like there could be some air bubbles somehow, and that could be in my cooling system. Maybe that's what's causing it. So I've been letting the car get up to temperature with the cap off to try and get those air bubbles out, and the level's not going down or anything. So I don't know, but you can see it's kind of hard to get a good view on that, but it's right above the low marker on there. So I don't know, guys. That was kind of the last thing that I figured to check. So if you guys have any suggestions, please let me know. And with that being said, that's it for today, guys. Thank you all in advance for any sort of advice you might have. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.